Hey everybody, welcome back to Dude's Brunch. It's a podcast about pop culture, internet garbage, and black coffee. I'm your host, Taylor Olmstead, and with me on a special two-dude episode, it's Sean Evans. Sean, what did you have for brunch today?
Today I made pancakes, and we had coffee.
Nice.
What did you have for brunch today?
Today I made a smoothie and peanut butter toast and coffee after my run. I am officially training for a half marathon, Sean.
Aww.
Again.
That's nice. Don't get injured this time, okay?
I'm going to try not to. Last time, listeners, I tried to train for a half marathon. Sean wrote me an excellent training plan, and I got about 5 weeks into it and then sprained my ankle. So going to be a little more cautious this summer and see if I could do a little bit better.
Sticks and stones may break your bones, but curbs will always trip you up and sprain your ankle.
That's right. This is also my first couple of runs with my new unlimited data plan. And I gotta say, Apple Music's cardio playlists are on point. They have these really great 6-hour long workout playlists in various genres. And I've just been hopping around through different ones and they've all been really good.
God, love that unlimited.
For sure. So Tyler is not with us today because it's Catherine's birthday. So a happy birthday to Catherine DiMartino, Tyler's significant other, and sometime panelist and collaborator of the Dudes Brunch family. So happy birthday, Catherine. Just some quick items of follow-up this week. We're off for a couple of weeks in May because it was the beginning of wedding season and we were all doing a bunch of traveling and family stuff and weddings and all that junk, But wanted to quickly catch up on a few things we missed at the end of May. First of all, I saw a cool thing on Reddit that just seemed like not really worthy of a whole episode, but a short little discussion. Sean, did you see that the new British 5-pound notes can play a record?
No.
So
do you have to put a hole in them, though, to put them on the turntable?
No. So they're made of a really thick plastic, and if you start your turntable spinning, you can actually put the corner of the note into the groove of the record, and it'll act as a needle and play the record.
Oh, okay. I thought you put it on and dropped a needle on it.
Oh no, that'd be way more hipster.
Okay, I was like, damn,
that would be a very British thing to do, but no, you can just use the side of the bill to play records. I'll link to a video of this in the show notes, but it was just something cool. I think these new plastic banknotes that they're doing over there are really interesting. It'd be interesting to see if we ever got them here, but I don't think we're going to. I think we'll be on paper for a while.
Hold on, I want to watch the video of this real quick. You just gotta get it on there just right, though. If you have it off, you get 3 bands at once.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, it's kind of cool.
It's just a little
I'm not blown away by it, but
something that will blow you away, though, another just little piece of follow-up. On kottke.org saw a link for a playlist on Spotify created by a guy named Ben Greenman. And he created this playlist for the New Yorker magazine's holiday party in 2010. And it's one song per year that kind of summarizes the sound of that year. And he originally made it from 1925 to 2010. And then in the past couple of weeks, he's updated it to go through 2018. And I've listened to little bits and pieces of it, and it seems really cool. It's kind of a fun exercise in popular music history. Mm-hmm. But they talk about it on kottke.org, saying, it's actually the perfect party playlist because it starts out kind of soft, and then it builds in intensity as you get to the more modern stuff, which kind of feels like the soundtrack to a good party. So maybe check that out.
I don't want to be nasty on this, but how would one have... How old is he? How old is this dude?
I don't know.
But I'm assuming that he wasn't born in 1910.
Oh, no.
Okay, so I wonder what the methodology is for getting a track that summarizes the sound of music from 1910.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know if he's looking at top selling charts or what's most historically significant. I don't really know what the rationale behind it was.
I'm sure it's much as you progress into the 40s and 50s, it gets better, but as far as I know, I'm not aware of a lot of music before that date, so... Yeah,
you kind of just got to take his word for it. We talked a couple of weeks ago on our Raconteurs episode about Jack White and his legacy with Seven Nation Army playing in ballparks and stadiums around the world. Recently, Jack White attended a baseball game, as he does on occasion. He's a pretty big baseball fan. And they played Seven Nation Army, and there's just this great photo of a stone-faced Jack White raising 2 fists in the air while the audience sings along to Seven Nation Army.
He did it.
We've reached peak Jack White, y'all.
He did it. I don't think he needs a smile on that one. It's like the seventh day of rest. You can just look down and be proud of your accomplishments. We did it, everybody. Stadiums all over the world. Never heard of me, don't know who I am. But in my attempt to make something so simple, it's become so grand.
I do wonder, did they show him on the Jumbotron? And if so, how many of those people knew who he was? And how many of them were like, who's this weird-looking white dude with the long hair?
Oh, he needs a haircut.
He's looking a little homeless at the moment.
How awesome is that? He's like if John Cage was cool.
Classical music fans are going to be so mad at that reference. So, since Tyler's not here, Sean and I decided to do just a little mini topic, or I guess maybe not a mini topic, it'll probably be a pretty decent discussion, but on something that, quite frankly, we knew that Tyler wasn't going to want to talk about. Let's be honest, Sean, isn't that what's going on here?
Yeah, kind of. This week on Tyler Struggles with Pop Music, Tyler.
So, this week, Kanye West released his new solo album, Ye.
Oh, is that how it's said?
Yes, it's a shortening of his name.
I wanted to say this was kind of like one of those old-timey themed.
Oh, you thought it was Ye?
I thought it was Ye.
The original title of this album may have been The Spiritual Awakening, which is also kind of an interesting title.
Okay. Okay.
But before we talk about the music of the album, there's been a lot of discussion since this came out on Friday of, what is going on with Kanye? Because he's kind of been weird recently, more weird than usual. He's described it himself as, quote, a shaky-ass year. So I figured I'd do a brief timeline of the shaky-ass year before we get into the album itself. So, of course, Kanye's last album, The Life of Pablo, came out in 2016, and right after that album, he announced that he was working on a new one called TurboGrafx 1600, and he was going to put it out that following summer, but then never finished it before he went on tour, and then while he was on tour, he had a psychotic break and went into rehab. Shortly after coming out of rehab, he was spotted in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where he was supposedly collaborating with Justin Vernon from Bon Iver, and there were a bunch of other artists that were flying out to Wyoming to spend time with him and work on albums and things. And around this time was when Kanye kind of fell off of social media for a while. Then when he came back, everything was crazy. This is where we had Kanye being photographed with Donald Trump and wearing a Make America Great Again hat and claiming that people who don't like his support of Trump just don't believe in free speech. And then he did the interview with Charlemagne the God and made some really reprehensible comments about slavery and got into a fight with some people at TMZ. And in the midst of all of this craziness, he announced that he was coming back to music. And so he announced, first and foremost, that he was going to put out a song explaining why he supports Trump and kind of his thoughts on the outrage at him supporting Trump. Then he released Lift Yourself as a troll, which we talked about a few weeks ago on this show. That's the one with the poop diddy scoops, which you all probably remember. But that was a joke, and a couple hours later he put out Ye versus the People, which features T.I., where Kanye is articulating his political beliefs while T.I. kind of voices the concerns of the larger rap community, asking him why he believes these things. And that track is really interesting, and so I got really excited for this new album. And then he announced that this is going to be one of these good music summers, which he did for both Life of Pablo and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, where he and other artists on his Good Music label release a bunch of music together in kind of a sequence. And the way it's going to work this year is there are 5 albums coming out over the course of 5 subsequent Fridays. Each album is 7 songs long, and all of them are produced by Kanye. The first one was Daytona by Pusha T, which came out 2 weeks ago as we record. And then, of course, Ye by Kanye West came out this week. Next week, we get Kids See Ghosts, which is a collaboration between Kanye and Kid Cudi. Then there's a Nas album that doesn't have a title yet, and a Teyana Taylor album, which doesn't have a title yet. And again, all of these are being produced by Kanye West and were recorded in the studio in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So kind of knowing that whole picture, we got this 7-track album from Kanye on Friday. And I know Sean's listened to it. And Sean, have you listened to the Pusha T as well?
Yeah.
So I don't really know where to start this discussion. I guess maybe we can go in order and talk about the Pusha T first. Does that make sense?
I think we talk about Kanye first and talk about Pusha.
Okay, let's talk about the Kanye first. So the Kanye album is 7 tracks. It's called Ye. I recently found out that the cover art for the album is actually a photo of the mountains outside of Jackson Hole that Kanye took on his iPhone on the way to the premiere party, and then using the markup tool in the iPhone screenshots, wrote, "I hate being bipolar, it's awesome," across the mountains, and that's the album cover. The whole thing has this very, like, kind of thrown together aesthetic to it, but when you listen to these tracks, it really feels like a lot of thought went into them.
Mm-hmm.
They come from a very dark place as well. The first song, "I Thought About Killing You," talks about kind of Kanye's battles with depression and suicidal thoughts and homicidal thoughts. It's a very dark place to begin this album.
I feel like I don't know if it's so much about, this is my interpretation, I don't know if it's about homicidal thoughts as much as it is like when you're told you're bipolar, right? It's this kind of overgeneralized idea of there being like two people that live it within you, and this idea that like one of them is the good Kanye and one of them is the bad Kanye, and that if you want to get better, you have to get rid of the bad Kanye, even though there might be aspects of the bad Kanye that are really good. It almost kind of reminded me of, not to throw Kanye or mental illness in this way, but like the episode of Rick and Morty where they go into the machine that takes away all the evil parts of them.
Oh, it takes away all their evil parts? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like you realize that evil Morty, or like good Morty, doesn't really have that much of a conscience, and like, but bad Rick really cares about Morty, and so it really is subjective on like each person's interpretation of what is good and bad. So when I heard that, I was like, okay, this makes a lot of sense, and it kind of added a little bit more depth to this album than what I'm, not to jump to comparisons with Pusha T right away, but like I didn't feel like Pusha T's album was as reflective as Kanye's was, and two, I also feel like rhythmically, beat-wise, Kanye takes it to that experimental level, like, right off the bat.
Yeah, musically, when I heard that Kanye was collaborating with Bon Iver, this track was exactly what I expected that to sound like, right? It's kind of atmospheric, it's very sparse at the beginning. There's these great vocal loops performed by Francis and the Lights in the background, which is awesome. But then Kanye is also doing this stuff to his voice that I think kind of supports your theory of the good and bad Kanye, right? Like, there are sections of it that are in his normal voice, and then sections that are pitch shifted down and pitch shifted up, and it really kind of feels like he's like playing with these different sides of himself. The part that really stands out to me with that is when he says, "Sometimes I think really bad things, really, really bad things," and that whole section is like shifted almost 2 octaves down below his normal voice. And then he comes back to his normal voice and says, "And I love myself way more than I love you." See, if I was trying to relate it to more people, I'd probably say I'm struggling with loving myself because that seems like a common theme, but that's not the case here. I love myself way more than I love you, and I think about killing myself, so best believe I thought about killing you today. I mean, that's not an easy thing to write or an easy thing to say, but I think the minimal construction of this track and the kind of simple delivery of him just speaking it for the first few minutes makes it seem easier than it is, you know? Did you get that vibe?
Oh, yeah, totally. That's his gift. He makes all of it seem like... I feel like he almost falls into that when you go to an art museum and you look at pop art and you're inevitably going to hear somebody say the words, "Oh, I could do that," but then you immediately have to come back thinking it in your head and not confront them, obviously, with being like, "Why didn't you then if you're so smart?" And like... I think that's partially what comes out in Kanye's genius in terms of producing music, is that he makes it seem, it's like so elegant. It's like when you watch somebody who's really good at a sport do it, and then you try it and you're like, "Oh my God, that's so hard. Like, how do they do that?" But it just looks, it's like inspiring. That's how good it is.
Yeah, I think you get even more of that. And we'll work our way kind of track by track through. Yikes is the song that a lot of people are talking about. It seems like it's kind of the fire track on this, the like, you know, most traditionally fun kind of song on here, which is saying a lot because it is not a bright and happy song. Mm-hmm. But even on this track, like, the production is amazing. His verses are really, really good. And he makes it seem easy, but he's doing some serious heavy lifting on some of these verses. And he sings the whole hook with very little auto-tune, which, like, you know, we all used to make fun of Kanye for trying to sing, but it feels like he's finally coming into his own on this, like, half-sung, half-rapped kind of feel, you know?
Well, I think that's what's really interesting, is that there's no features on this whatsoever.
Well, the features that are on here aren't credited.
Oh, they're not credited. Ah, shit.
Because there's a lot of background vocals and things, but for the most part, yeah, there aren't features.
Sorry, I'm just really used to credits. I was like, wow, there's no credits on here. Like, this man is amazing.
Yeah, there's some background vocals, but on Yikes, for example, there's no traditional feature verse at all. No. What did you think of the end of this song with his "I'm a superhero" outro?
It's Kanye.
For those who haven't listened to it, I may cut in a little snippet of it. He says,
"See, that's my third part. That's my bipolar shit, nigga. What? That's my superpower, nigga. Ain't no disability. I'm a superhero. I'm a superhero."
Because for the most part, this is a very serious album, but in the end of this one song, he's just like making these screaming noises.
Yep. Look out, Screamo, because Kanye's coming.
Kanye's coming for you. So then, on All Mine, Kanye talks about infidelity and kind of his quasi-open relationship with Kim Kardashian West, and whether or not like the things he does with women and talks about doing with women count as cheating. This song was actually the most interesting song on this album to me, because it felt a lot like something off of the most recent Jay-Z album, Magna Carta, 444, which is almost entirely about his cheating on Beyonce. It kind of feels like both of them are at this reckoning point of like having to own up to these actions and be better husbands and fathers. And they're both really struggling with that.
I like to shout out to Tristan Thompson in here.
Yeah, that was a good reference. This is also, I believe, the song with the line, "All these thoughts on Christian Mingle," which is just like such a Kanye thing to say. Like, he's never been one to mince words, but dang, man. So then, No Mistakes follows this up, and this is kind of the mental health track, and talking about, money and fame and how all of these things are going on in his life, but he's like trying to find some sense of stability, which, I found this pretty interesting. It wasn't like a standout to me in any way, but I enjoyed it. What did you think?
Yeah, it was good.
It does make me...
I mean, basically after All Mine, I kind of just... I think with the exceptions of Ghost Town, it kind of just ran all together for me.
Yeah, even at 7 tracks, it has kind of a U shape where the beginning and end are really good, and then the middle is just kind of bleh. The outro of this song has a chorus with Kid Cudi on it, and it makes me very excited for this new collaboration that they're putting out next week, because it's just so like lushly produced and interesting in a way that some of the other tracks on here aren't, that it makes me think like maybe Kanye's saving some of the cool stuff for that album.
Yeah.
But let's get into those last 2 tracks, because I do think they're the best too. Ghost Town, which is, again, a collaboration with Kid Cudi and a few other folks that do some background vocals, but largely it's Kanye on the verses and Kid Cudi singing the chorus. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this one, Sean.
Now, I really love the music in Ghost Towns, but Kid Cudi's kind of annoying.
Wow. Harsh words.
His voice doesn't fit in that well with the rest of the song, because it kind of has this like Midwestern blues kind of feel, and then you have his like off voice, like it's not really off voice, it's like it's either pitched or in a different key, and it's a good call like musically, but I think it's a little bit too jazzy for this, I feel like. And later on I'll listen to it and I'll say to myself, oh man, why did I say that? But right now I'm kind of like, it's alright.
I can see how you would say that. It felt really out of place to me the first couple times I listened to it, but coming back to it throughout the weekend has made me like it more and more. And it's nice to just hear Kanye on top of some really lush production. Lots of synths, lots of strings. There's a lot going on here.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a long time since we heard Kanye really do that big, like, cinematic kind of beat making that he used to do back when he was mostly producing.
Right.
I think the track that everybody's talking about, though, and I'm sure the one we'll spend the most time on, is the last song, Violent Crimes, where Kanye basically outlines how he has treated women poorly, and lots of men in the world generally, and rappers in particular, treat women really badly, and that he didn't realize that until he had a daughter. And of course, there's a bit of a troll on this track where it's listed as featuring Nicki Minaj, and her only feature on it is leaving a voicemail at the end, which is fine. Like, it was a dumb gimmick, but I still really like the song.
Did him and Nicki have a thing?
I think it was more just like she did such a great feature verse on Monster back in the day that the idea of Kanye and Nicki on a track together, everybody was like, oh, it's going to be the next Monster. No, not on this album. But the line that he calls her out in is, Father, forgive me, I'm scared of the karma, because now I see women as something to nurture, not something to conquer. I hope she like Nicki, I'll make her a monster, not having menages, I'm just being silly. It's a really, like, passionate delivery on Kanye's part, talking about what he hopes his daughter will be.
I was gonna say, it kind of seems like a reckoning track more than that, though.
What do you mean?
That it's kind of like saying, like, an admission of some past mistakes, and that hopefully in the end that we can, like, get over this, and that karma won't come full circle, and in recognizing this, everything will be all right, everything will get better. But it's like really mellow, really it's definitely in a minor key, so
yeah, there's a section of it that I found really particularly powerful when you talk about reckoning. He talks about the idea of watching his daughter grow up, and he says, let me see if I can find, that's your baby, you love her to death, now she's cutting class and hanging with friends, you break a glass and say it again, she can't comprehend the danger she in, if you whoop her ass, she moving with him, then he whoop her ass, you go through it again. And this idea of, like, the cycle of abuse that women get trapped in, and him feeling like he knows how that happens and wants to try and find a way to keep it from happening to the women in his life. That, I think, is a really interesting thing to come from Kanye at this time in his life, when he has so many problems in his own psyche at the moment, yet he's so passionately talking about looking out for his daughter and making sure that she's not brought down by the kinds of mistakes that he made. I think that's a really interesting thing, and something that, you know, Pusha T is never going to write a song about, right? That's the difference kind of between these two albums.
This year, Kanye West becomes a parent.
Kanye's been a parent. It's like all of a sudden now he's realizing how responsible he is as a parent. What, 2 albums and 2 children in?
Oh, so what you're saying is he became a parent, but now he is a parent.
Maybe that's what it is.
And maybe it's apparent that he's a parent.
It is definitely apparent that he is a parent.
I wonder if everybody has that kind of moment, though. Like, where it all seems like surreal, and then it, like, clicks. Like, the light turns on, and you're like, oh, wow, this is for real, and I hope it's different than the way that it went down with me. You kind of have a personal reconcile with what's going on.
Yeah, I don't know. That is kind of an interesting question. I think back to, you know, other songs that artists have written about their children or for their children. And I think there's definitely, like, a musical subgenre of songs to your child, right? You know, but there aren't many that talk about the realities of, like, growing up in the world as violently as this song does, which I think is kind of a product of Kanye's upbringing and the world that he lives in and the lifestyle that he led. But yeah, it is just interesting to see him come to this very sharp realization.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, thoughts on Ye? What do you think?
Good album.
For WWDC like it's your birthday?
Do you have strong opinions on Snapchat filters?
Are you tired of 3-hour-long tech podcasts?
Then you should check out 10-Minute Tech Talk. It's a show Emily and I make every single Tuesday where we catch you up on a week's worth of technology news in just 10 minutes. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Google Play, and basically anywhere else you can get podcasts.
So then let's talk about the one that came before it, Daytona, the Pusha T album that Kanye produced. Totally different piece of work.
And how?
I mean, from the very first, bar, it's totally different. There's electric guitars and piano samples, and the beats are huge. And, I mean, Pusha T is just, bragging and yelling and just doing his normal Pusha T thing. It's super braggadocious, almost gangster, lots of talk about drug dealing and money and cars and women, and it's so interesting to see these albums side by side and knowing that they came from the same batch of studio sessions. Did you have an initial read on that album?
Not really. It's not bad.
You know,
I always, when it comes to listening to hip hop and stuff, because I feel like I'm disconnected from the lyrics, I always find myself more accustomed to listening to the beats, and I really like it, and some of the hooks. But I can say that I'm not really in tune with everything.
Which, if you're a beat listener, this is the album for you.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic when it comes to that. That's why I was like, wow, this is just from the first song. I'm already like, wow, this is great.
Yeah, this is the Kanye the producer that I have missed. Because from Yeezus into Life of Pablo, but especially on Yeezus, it just never really felt like he was flexing his muscles as a producer. And this 7-track collection is, everything that we love about Kanye's production, the old soul samples and the just really intense loop drums and things like that, but with elements of his more recent work, lots of distorted guitars and kind of complex song structures and weird breakdowns. This is a new evolution for him that I'm really excited about.
And I feel like that's kind of how my positive feelings toward this album are more wrapped around Kanye's ability to put together beats, because you can tell that he's been back and listening to music. And he's been really playing in his head with different soundscapes and sitting behind the computer and really getting to work on creating sonically what he wants to hear, what he thinks is good. And the thing that I feel about with him is that if these were the ones that made the cut, there's probably a lot more that didn't even make it close. But knowing that he has so many albums that he produced that are coming out, this man was busy for a long time.
Yeah, you talk about Kanye hiding away in the mountains for 2 years, and people are like, oh, well, what's he doing? Is he going crazy or whatever? This is what I was expecting to come out of this. And I don't think that his solo album was of the caliber that everybody wanted it to be. But if the beats on these next 3 albums are as good as what's on this Pusha T album, I'm 100% on board. He tweeted a video of himself at the piano a couple of weeks ago, just banging out a new beat that he was working on. And it kind of as you were talking, Sean, it reminded me of that image of him. When he gets in that headspace, just works in a way that I find really interesting. He's kind of this weird, mad scientist-y type of person that buries himself in a studio with a computer and a keyboard and just kind of goes. Yet somehow he always comes out with a sound that feels fresh, feels fashionable, and is usually 6 to 12 months ahead of what the rest of the music world is interested in. I don't know how he does it.
He's got a good method.
Well, he's got a good sense of style too. We've talked about this with his clothes too. He just knows ahead of time kind of where the trend is heading.
No, he's also the maker of the trend.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know, it might not be, I mean, I don't want to credit him as not being able to read the tea leaves or something like that, but he reads the tea leaves because he's the one that said it was cool to read the tea leaves. You know what I mean? It makes it that much easier when you're able to do it because you have that kind of influence over stuff, which is really awesome.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about visuals. We talked about the album cover on Ye. The album cover on Daytona has been an interesting development. So I think maybe the day before the album came out, maybe 2 days before the album came out, Kanye went to Pusha T and said that they needed to change the cover. And he wanted it to be the photo of Whitney Houston's bathroom on the day that she was discovered dead in the bathtub. And his quote is something like, "This is what people need to see before they hear this music." And then he paid out of pocket the $85,000 licensing fee to use that photo as the album cover at the last minute. And now you have Bobby Brown coming out and saying that it's in bad taste and he shouldn't have done it. And, the critic circles have been really confused by it. And it seems like an odd choice, but it's a very Kanye choice, I think, of creating this kind of mini controversy that not only promotes the work but just kind of gets people talking about like the mystique of Kanye and of Pusha T for that matter, of like, these are bold, risk-taking artists and look at this risky thing that they're doing. Does the cover bother you, Sean?
See, I was kind of disconnected from Whitney Houston's death and everything, so I remember talking about this, and not me talking about it, but maybe listening to it being talked about at work, which seemed to cause considerable scandal that I've been just kind of disconnected from. But I was just looking at it and I was like, man, is this his bathroom or something? But no, I didn't realize that was what it was until now. But when you start talking about it, I was like, okay, well, it's coming together. I mean, yeah, I want to say I think it is in bad taste. But if, like you said, it's true that Pusha and Kanye are ready to push those limits, and let's not forget that they're surrounded by the Kardashians that are like, they figured out the scheme. Like they have the algorithm for causing controversy and creating drama. I'm not always saying that as in like it's bad drama, but they have the ability to create hype, to take away like the weight of the word drama. They have a way to be able to hype things and turn things into hype that I think Kanye and the people that are surrounded by them are able to capitalize on. And in this time, it is a particularly salient way to get your stuff out there. And if $85,000 and a few like brow beatings are what you're willing to pay for that, to make it in an environment of music that is ever increasingly hard to profit in, yeah, this might have been a good decision. I wouldn't have done it personally.
I think that is what is most interesting to me about Kanye West in 2018. Kanye is doing all sorts of crazy bullshit to build hype, I'm assuming, because he knows that's what it's going to take. I honestly don't know how much of what he's doing these days is really what he thinks and how much of it is marketing. Like, is he really a Trump supporter, or is he doing that to get people talking about him? It's hard to know, and I think it kind of takes the like David Bowie-esque like creating a character out of yourself in conjunction with an album. It like takes that to a whole different level, where like every 2 years Kanye is in a completely different headspace and he's doing some crazy new thing, and like we can't stop talking about it. And I can't help but feel like he's doing this as a conscious effort, and I don't know if that makes it better or worse, honestly.
I don't know if you can make, if we're coming at it from like an artist standpoint, I don't know if you can really, it would be correct to make a moral judgment on that. I think maybe from like a level 1 analysis of personally, yeah, of course you can do that. But I think if the gimmick is to play the game and to be the best at the game, he's doing it. Sorry, viewers can't see me making all these faces where I'm like nodding my head and stuff. But like, yes, he's doing it, and he's super successful at it. And he's good at getting his good art out there, even with other artists that are lyrically and seem to lack the depth lyrically and emotionally that Kanye puts into his own work.
Yeah, I think that's really an important thing to think about with this Pusha album. Like, would people have cared about a new Pusha album? Some people. Would people have cared if Kanye produced a new Pusha album? Some more people.
Yeah.
But I think when you add in the album art and when you add in all the controversy, now people are talking about this Pusha album that would have never listened to him, including me. That's not a kind of hip-hop that I listen to usually. I'm not really into that kind of trap sound that he is usually associated with. But I listened to this one and I totally loved it. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely working. So of these next 3 albums that are coming out, the Kid Cudi collaboration, the Nas, and the Teyana Taylor, which one are you most excited for?
Honestly, I have to speak as a rap and hip hop layman that I do not know enough of these people's work, of their work, to say that I'm excited or that I would have listened to these albums outside of knowing that they were coming out and Kanye was on them. But I know Nas the best, so I'm probably going to say Nas.
I think I'm most interested and maybe least excited at the same time about the Kid Cudi one. And the reason I say that is like, I'm most interested in it because Kanye hasn't done a true collaboration since Watch the Throne. And Watch the Throne was amazing. But I'm worried that we're all getting our hopes up a little bit too high because Watch the Throne was so good. And so I'm like cautiously optimistic about this album. But really, I think what's going to be most fun for me is listening to all 5 of them like on a playlist when they're all out, because I'm kind of viewing it as a big body of work rather than 5 independent albums. And it'll be interesting to see if they play well together or if they're all kind of distinctly different. So this week for Internet Garbage, I want to talk about a new thing that's been happening. It's this thing where people are making fonts out of stuff. So the first that I saw of this was someone took the handwriting of Kurt Cobain, David Bowie, and John Lennon and turned them into typefaces or fonts that you can use on your computer to write with. And so I sent the link to this to Sean. The fonts are really interesting. They look like handwriting. I don't know that I would specifically be able to pick from a lineup like which is Kurt, which is Bowie, and which is Lennon. But I don't know. It's kind of intriguing. Sean, what are your thoughts on this?
So they're fonts, and now I can write in ketchup.
Well, that's that's where I wanted to go with this. I'm glad you already read my hand. In response to these famous people's handwriting fonts, social media weirdos at Arby's have created the Arby's font, which is a set of letters written in Arby sauce that you can type with. What? I feel like Cobain and Bowie and Lennon handwriting fonts are gimmicky to begin with. Arby sauce is like on a new twisted, like post-meta level that I just can't handle.
I mean, it's what it is, man. Fun times.
I mean, what on earth would you write in Arby sauce?
Have a happy birthday, love Arby's. Dude, could you imagine if Nihilist Arbys started doing all of their tweets on like butcher paper in Arby sauce font?
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing.
Just think about that. It would take you to the next level.
That would take it to the next level. It does kind of look like letters scrawled in blood. So, I could see how that would be effective. I would like to see anniversary cards that are written in Arby sauce. Like, happy anniversary, honey, I love you. Here's some gross sauce on a piece of paper. So, an interesting development in real-time follow-up here. It does look like the Songwriter Fonts, so the David Bowie, John Lennon, and Kurt Cobain, as well as a few others, were all on a website called songwritersfonts.com. And the estates of those individuals have put out a cease and desist, and the website has now been taken down. That's really bizarre to me. So they're saying that it was considered a violation of intellectual property law.
For copying their handwriting?
Yeah. Is a person's handwriting their intellectual property?
No.
So if the person's handwriting isn't their intellectual property, is the text that they captured the handwriting from, right? Because so for example, I had a book growing up when I was in middle and high school of Kurt Cobain's diaries that were kind of published as a coffee table book. And I'm assuming that's where they scanned all of those letters to build his font from. So if by taking it out of a published book of his writing, I could see how that would be intellectual property. But if you just happen to own a piece of paper that John Lennon signed for you, and then you scanned that and made it into a font, does that make it your property?
See, I think that's where the questions are really good now. Wait a second, so if this does this and this does that, then I don't know. Does the university that has my handwriting on file, is it theirs now? Is it not mine anymore? Or is it only someone's property after they're dead?
That was going to be my question for you, Sean, is, I know you and I have both written plenty of things that are out in the world in universities and schools and things. Everybody has. You turned in school assignments when you were a kid, things like that. What would you think about someone turning your handwriting into a font?
I don't know. I never honestly thought about it.
So if you walked into a Target tomorrow to get a card for Sarah, and you found one where the words were already in your handwriting printed on the card, would that bother you?
I don't know if it would be my handwriting. I think as I get older and I look at my parents' handwriting versus my own, it's really eerie how similar it is. Which makes me wonder if it has more to do with the motion of your hand versus the actual individuality of how you write things.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because one of the places I wanted to go with this is that idea of handwriting is something somewhat hereditary, right? So I would be bothered if my handwriting was on a greeting card. Mm-hmm. Or some other commerce item. I just feel that would be kind of a weird invasion. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, after my grandma passed, my aunt got a tattoo of the words "Love You, Mom" that she had an artist pull from a letter that my grandma had written her. And so these were the words written in my grandma's handwriting from this old letter that my aunt then had transferred and tattooed on her. And I think that is much more interesting and much more like sentimental and meaningful. It's something about when you introduce it to the masses and make it this like mass market thing that it suddenly starts to feel very eerie and creepy to me. And I don't really know like where along the line from, like family members to the mass market it becomes a problem. But somewhere in there's like a clear tipping point in my mind of using someone's handwriting becomes a weird invasion of their privacy.
Right. I don't know.
Would you ever make a font of your own handwriting?
I don't know if I would make it font, because I'm not that technically savvy, but I know that I have used like signature fonts that I've gotten online as a signature, but it wasn't my own. Or like if you ever done PDF and you can like kind of sign it on your trackpad, and then kind of like copy and paste it, but it's not really even that close to my signature. So
that's where I was heading with this, because there's part of me that thinks like if I had been more technically savvy as a kid, I might have scanned my own handwriting in to make a font of it so that I didn't have to handwrite papers anymore. Because then I could just fake it somehow. I'm sure it wouldn't work. Like, I'm sure teachers would have totally caught on. But I do kind of like the idea of a kid somewhere in like middle school or something painstakingly recreating his handwriting as a font just so that he doesn't have to handwrite things anymore.
I mean, but what's the point of typing your handwriting if your handwriting is illegible?
That's true.
It seems kind of counterintuitive.
Is your handwriting illegible?
No.
I don't think if I've seen something you've handwritten, it hasn't been in years. I honestly can't think of what your handwriting looks like. Mine is not great. It's very small and hard to read.
See, I've gotten compliments before about how I have good handwriting. That's legible for a man.
I could see that from you. I could see you having crisp, clean handwriting.
I do care, because if I can't read it, then what's the point? The whole point of writing it down was so I can refer back to it later. So if I can't do that, then what is the point?
I mean, I can read my own handwriting. I'm just not sure anyone else can. That's my problem.
No. Well.
I also write much more sloppily when I know that no one else is going to read it but me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why I do that, but I always have. Like, the way I write on, like, a whiteboard in front of people in a meeting is totally different than the way I would write, like,
well, yeah, but that's
on a Post-it note at my desk.
That's a totally different motion.
That's true.
Yeah, writing on a whiteboard, it really matters because, like, you got to draw with your whole arm now instead of just with your wrist or with your fingers. Yeah, it's like painting with oils versus painting with like crayons.
Yeah,
charcoal.
Guess you're probably true.
It's a little bit different of a technique.
Well, I'm curious to hear from the listeners if any of them have turned their handwriting into fonts.
We should do follow up with this on Tyler, because I'm sure that he has things that he feels about this that would be fun to talk about.
Knowing Tyler, he probably has his handwriting as a font.
He probably does. A lazy jerk.
All right, and now it's time to round the show out like we always do with a round of shameless plugs. And since it's just me and Sean today, I'll be charitable and let Sean go first.
Hi, everybody. You can check me out on twitter.com at realcashotter.
So good. So good. You can follow me on the socials as at TC Olmsted. I also have a blog where I write articles once a week. That's tcolmsted.com. You can follow Tyler on the socials. He's at TDR Design. He would probably appreciate that. And of course, you can like and follow the show. If you really like what we do here, you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, recommend us on Overcast, or share the show with a friend. Maybe put it on when you're on a summer road trip this summer and make your family listen to it against their will. I don't know. I don't know your life. I don't know your choices.
Good times.
Other than that, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you on the next episode of Dude's Brunch. Got some chest congestion today. Okay.